Hi, welcome to the 3D Pen Den. So you get your brand new pen, whichever one you decided to get. You load your filament in, and then this happens. And you think, is the pen broken or is it just me? This is too hard. Or even worse, it does work a bit, but not so well. Now you know it's just you, right? All of this, you are working on the wrong surface. So what is the right surface? Let me show you what to look for and why. And if you stick it out till the end of this video, I will share with you what my favorite 3D pen work surface is. So let's get to it and subscribe if you want to know more. Now, I am not saying that there is not a bit of a learning curve to using these pens, but one of the top reasons people quit is because they are struggling with their work surface. That's why I almost gave up. So here is what I wish I knew back then. 7 things you want from your work surface: adhesion, release, transparency, heat resistance, flexibility, availability, and affordability. Adhesion. The most important feature is that it does stick to the surface reliably. The best way to test it is to write something in cursive, preferably something loopy. If the changes of directions in the loop work, the surface is grabby enough to work for you. If some of those loops fail, try again. Perhaps you do need to be a tad more careful or work more slowly. If it fails 3 times in a row, it's not a reliable surface. You want to have a piece stuck to the surface until you decide it should come off. Which brings us to the second point: release. Some materials will stick too well and leave a residue on the back that you will need to scrub off with water. Or you will even break your piece trying to pry it off the surface. You can fix it, soak it and scrape it, but they are all unnecessary steps. To test your release, it's a good idea to make a larger patch and see if that pops off, because the larger the solid surface area, the harder it is to remove. Single strand may come off easily, but larger patch may not. This one seems fine. One of the most commonly available surfaces is paper. Pens and paper go together. And by paper, I mean all paper-based media, including cardboard and all kinds of masking tape. The trouble with paper is that every paper is different depending on its finish. So while some papers work, like this one, some leave so much residue that they are more suitable for when you want the plastic permanently attached to them. For 3 years, I thought all masking tapes worked. And they mostly do. Until recently, I met one that didn't. So always pre-test paper media. The advantage of paper is that you can work straight over your original drawing. As you can see, the release is fine, but the plastic picked up the pencil line off the paper. which you may or may not want depending on the project. Let's try a computer printout on a cardstock. Mostly clean, but some of the ink came off. Not much, it's cleanable, but it does get worse if you use the same printout multiple times. The paper soon starts wearing out and may stick even if it didn't the first time around. So wouldn't it be nice if we could work on something that is transparent and put our original picture safely underneath it? That way we could use it over and over again. Which brings us to the next point, transparency. So let's look at a few transparent materials that could work. Glass, plexiglass, plastic sheet protectors, transparency film, tracing paper, wax paper, parchment, lots of options. So let's test them for adhesion and release. Let's look at the translucent papers first. People tend to look at parchment, wax paper, and tracing paper as interchangeable, but they are very different. This is what I would call adhesion 0, just like the tile in the beginning of this video. So parchment would have adhesion 0, release good, I guess so good it doesn't even stick. The wax paper sticks a little bit, but not confidently enough. I would give this surface 1 star for low adhesion. The tracing paper works remarkably well. I will give this one 2 stars for good adhesion. But since it is a paper medium, I would recommend to pre-test yours, just to make sure the brand you get also releases that well. The glass works. And the release is well too. Now plexiglass. The adhesion is also excellent. In fact, it works a bit too well. I'm having trouble removing it. I'll have to try so hard I may break the piece or scratch the surface. I'm gonna give this release a question mark. These plastic pockets have adhesion somewhere between 0 and 1 star, but I'm gonna say 0. Transparency film deserves 2-star adhesion. Just make sure your particular brand can take the heat of your particular pen. Now, some transparent plastics will deform with the heat of the pen and the filament. You can see this one puckers with the heat. plastic is compromised by the heat. Which brings us to the next point, heat resistance. The surfaces we tested so far, except the last one, took the heat relatively well. So how about the ultimate heat-resistant surface, the silicone? There are many affordable silicone baking and work mats on the market. Some are even translucent, so let's test a few. This one has adhesion 0, and actually so did all the others. These are actually perfect when you need the plastic not to stick. Now for our next point, flexibility. Flexibility is not absolutely necessary. Sometimes it's actually good to have the surface rigid. But if you have a complex design, it is way easier to just simply peel the surface off the design than to try to loosen the design of the surface line by line. Also, if you are using any folding techniques, then the flexibility of the surface becomes a must. See? Instant transition from 2D to 3D. Availability and affordability. I'm not going to talk too much about these last 2 points because these depend on where in the world you happen to live and on your individual budget. And most of the surfaces we covered so far are affordable and available. But speaking of those issues, let's take a look at few surfaces that are a bit more expensive, since they are actually made specifically for 3D pen work. Here are the 3 that I have worked with. There are obviously more. Some may be available where you are and some may not. So let's test these for adhesion and release. 3D Mate Mat has grooved patterns that trap your 3D pen lines and make them completely straight and easy to make. I think of this one as a quilting ruler that helps you create complex patterns out of basic shapes. If you can afford one, there is nothing like it for precision and speed. Release is super easy too. Let's test the back of it, since a lot of people seem to use it that way. I would give this one just 1 star for low adhesion. If you are super careful, it sticks, but we have seen far better adhesion on some of the previous surfaces. I'm actually surprised it sticks at all, since most silicone mats don't work. Okay, 3D Mate Mat gets 2 stars on the front of the mat and only 1 for the back. 3D Doodler surface works also very nicely. And it's transparent. Releases well. Definitely 2-star adhesion. CMO's surface is a bit small, but works just fine. For the PLA anyway. Two-star adhesion, good release. Now let's put all our surfaces from the opening of this video in, just to make our adhesion and release chart complete. Paper media is always questionable, so always pre-test. So far we have been testing just PLA, which is what I use almost exclusively because it's odorless and more environmentally friendly. But your pen may have come with only ABS in the box, which is often the case. So you may need to know that there are quite different plastics. Generally, ABS is way harder to get to stick to surfaces. If the surfaces didn't work for PLA, or not that well, it is not going to work for ABS either. We don't even have to test it. But even if it did work for PLA, it may not be enough stick for ABS. So let's test. Tracing paper was a star with PLA. It seems to do just as well with ABS. Just make sure your particular brand you can get works this well. After all, it is a paper medium. 2 stars. Now, glass is a surprise. It worked so well with PLA and it won't even stick, even a little bit. ABS adhesion 0. ABS on plexiglass works like a charm. But remember, so did the PLA, and then I could hardly get it off the surface. So, let's see. No, this one releases just fine. Okay, 2 stars for ABS adhesion. Transparency film worked really well with the PLA, and it looks like it's working just as nicely with ABS. Just make sure whatever brand you have available can take the heat of ABS, which is a bit higher than PLA. 2 stars. Now the professional surfaces designed for 3D pens all performed well on both plastics. 3D Mate Matte and 3D Doodler Pad both did well on PLA as well as ABS, as you would expect from surfaces designed for the job, with the exception of the CMO pad, which refused to have anything to do with ABS. I did extensive testing with ABS on the paper media, but let's just say it is as unpredictable as with PLA, and you need to test your papers before you use them. So there you have it. So what does work the best? The best performers from this list are tracing paper, plexiglass, transparency film, the front of 3D Mate Matte, and 3D Doodler Pad. Here are the winners. I do use all of these on and off, but I promise to tell you about my preferred surface. It is hands down the plexiglass sheet. So what about that questionable release with PLA? Remember when it stuck too much? I found that if I spray the surface with clear matte acrylic coating, the surface releases just fine. These are the 2 brands I tested. If these are not available in your part of the world, test stuff to find something similar. 2 coats of the spray and you are in business. There are a few do's and don'ts, but that will have to be a different video. So let's test it. Works and releases like a charm, and with both kinds of filament. So good luck, and do not let your surface intimidate you into quitting. See you next time.